The first gig that I ever went to was Slayer in Portsmouth Guildhall. This must have been around 1990, I suppose. Maybe 89, maybe 91. And it was everything that you might expect from an extreme metal gig. My friend went into the mosh pit one side, and he came back out that side, but his trousers came out the other side. It was full of my kind of people, I suppose, but it was a weird experience to be part of the crowd without feeling of the crowd, in a way, I suppose. But the point is that I've been into the darker side of music for quite some time. Goth, metal, industrial. I've always liked the aesthetic of black metal, doom metal, and so on, but less so the actual performance, because there's this unfortunate aspect to this kind of music where you can appreciate the technical skill and so on, or the symphonic quality of a lot of the music, albeit that it is very doom-laden, and then some shrieking muppet comes on and spoils the whole thing, like, and it's just no fun whatsoever at that point. Symphonic metal without anyone actually saying anything would probably be the way to go, which is part of the reason that I found myself more liking things like Goatcraft or Primitive Knot, which has more lyrical quality and sort of fuses a darker end of industrial music in some ways, or a kind of gothic version of Kraftwerk with those positive qualities from the metal. The point is that I like the aesthetic, I like the art, I like the overwrought titles and badges of the bands, and I've been into this for a long time. And so initially I was very, very excited by the advent of what's being called art punk, but really these are games that take on the metal aesthetic. You've got Lamentations of the Flame Princess, you've got Morkborg more recently, and I've flirted with some aspects of this style myself in Actual Fucking Monsters, though I pussied out by trying to be clever with the cover of the main book. I should have gone with what I did for the companion, I think, for the main book, but still. Or with Grimdark, at least in content, with Whitechester upcoming, with My Own Dungeon, with Blackjack and Hookers, has that overwrought style. But the more I've tried to do something with this style, the more I've explored this style, the more I've explored the overwrought presentation of content that's done in this style, the more dissatisfied in many ways I have become with it all. Why? Because it's all mouth and no trousers. It's all style, there's no substance to it. It parades around wearing the suit of black metal, death metal, speed metal, thrash, whatever, Napalm Death, Cradle of Filth. It wears their skins, but it doesn't embody what metal is and what it means, which is a form of transgressive entertainment. It goes out of its way to be shocking and extreme, and value is seen in that and of that in itself. It shouldn't be too surprising, really, and it doesn't betray some sort of evil or wrongness in the heart of these people who like this sort of thing. People like me who like this sort of thing. It's the same thrill that some people get from a roller coaster or from a horror film. From being scared or disgusted testing their own limits of their own tolerance. And that's where the problem lies, I think, because for all that these games adopt the style, there's very little that is actually shocking about any of them. Sure, there have been controversies, but there's no real substance to it. And the biggest controversies that have dogged Lamentations of the Flame Princess have had little or nothing to do with the content they've put out, and more to do with the conduct of certain people associated with it. Sure, there's a bit of gore or something here and there. There's some scary skeletons or whatever else, but there's no substance. There's no transgression. And so the more I've thought about this, the more I've become frustrated, and the more this desire has emerged in me to do things that are more transgressive. And yet I don't think that it's possible. And that makes me feel like a coward, and it also makes me feel like many of the other people who produce this sort of material, even before I really turned my attention to it, they're also cowards. Because it's all pretense, it's all surface, it's all shallow. It's all very well having a few gory illustrations, but unless the content of a game transgresses and challenges people, then it is just flash. So we should have games that explore these kind of darker areas, and we kind of did in the 90s, but again there wasn't ever really a full commitment to the bit, to the idea, to transgressing. We wanted to elevate role-playing games to the status of art, but we were unwilling to do what art does in questioning and pushing and stretching, changing things. So what would a transgressive game look like today? It would be the opposite of what we tend to see, with companies trying to expand and reach out, which is all well and good, but they're doing it by neutering their content. What are the views that are unacceptable today? If we have a game whose setting is full of bigotry and horrors and repression and oppression, rather than a vaguely D&D themed fun park, that would be kind of shocking and transgressive, particularly if you portray the oppressors in a somewhat sympathetic light. If we did a game about colonialism where the natives genuinely were horrible, primitive, evil, unlike real life, that would be transgressive and challenging. If we include sexuality in any really meaningful way, that is transgressive and challenging. If we have a game where you take the part of a spree killer or a serial killer or a rapist or a child molester or the victims of any of these, that would be challenging and transgressive. And that contrarian part of me that always wants to challenge and push and can't stand being told that you can't do something really wants to buck that. But this isn't an atmosphere where that's possible. And I think even I have to admit defeat. Because if I stay true to my artistic and perverse impulse to challenge and push and stretch and disgust and horrify and to transgress, then I'm not going to be able to sell anything, because I will be deplatformed, I will be pushed off, and it doesn't matter what my intent is. It doesn't matter how well I do it. If I tackle these subjects, I will certainly encourage certain people to attack me yet again and to impugn my motives and my reasoning and my character, even though I've set out exactly why and how I would want to do these things. To expand the art form, to transgress, to challenge people, to challenge myself. None of that matters. It all disappears. And all that matters is that the motives that they assign to you, that's what matters. And if you do make anything like this, if I made a truly explicit sexual game, I wouldn't be able to sell it. If I made a truly transgressive colonialist game, I would be hung, drawn and quartered on social media. Let alone if we played with the boundaries of truly transgressive sexuality in any explicit and obvious way. That would be too much. The impulse is there to challenge, to push, to buck, to expand the form, and to do what these products try to do but fall short of, to add the substance to the style. It's just not possible, and that's frustrating, and I hate myself for my own creative cowardice, and I hate all these others for their creative cowardice, because that's how we ended up here.